Hi, I'm Kyle, and this is the first episode of a special 5-part series of Kyle's Fictions. I thought I'd put this series together because with fiction, you don't have to be limited by the world you know around you. You can create new worlds to give yourself new ideas that you might not otherwise be able to find in the world you know, which allow you to look at that world in a new way. For this reason, I'm glad to have come across the various fictions I have in my life and intend to show why in this special series. In each of its episodes, I will talk about a significant piece of fiction I have encountered at one of 5 significant times in my life, and what they had taught me at those times, helping me to find encouragement when I had difficulty finding it myself. For this first episode, I'm going to talk about a piece of fiction I was introduced to in late elementary school, which may just have been my inspiration to start reading books on my own, the Silver Wing book series. To begin with, I was born in 1990 in Cobourg, Ontario, and grew up just north of the city on a cattle farm, a place I find beautiful enough to enjoy returning to visit it. When I was about 4, I was also diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a high-functioning form of autism that made it difficult for me to socialize with others. This meant when I started out in elementary school at Camborne Public that I had more social anxiety than most, and also had a special ed counselor. At this point in my life, I've been introduced to a few fictional stories, but mostly those were either stories that my mom or dad would have read to me themselves, that I would listen to on cassettes, or that I would watch on VHS movies. I don't think I had yet been inspired to make the effort of actually physically reading fiction on my own, though. Perhaps this was because I did not yet have a path in life I really felt like I wanted to follow. This was before I was introduced to the Silver Wing books around grade 5. The Silver Wing books, written by Canadian author Kenneth Oppel, for the most part, tell the adventures of a young North American silverwing bat named Shade. The series consists of 4 books, the first of which, Silverwing, published in 1997, was the first one my teacher read in my grade 5 class. It tells of the dangerous journey Shade must go on to reunite with his colony after being blown off course in a storm. The second book, Sunwing, published in 1998 and also read by my teacher to my class, tells of Shade's quest to find his missing father and, in the process, thwart a plot by the South American Vampirum cannibal bats to use a ritual to create eternal night. The third book, Firewing, published in 2002, which I read myself later in grade 9, tells of Shade's journey into the bat underworld to rescue his son, Griffin. The fourth book, Darkwing, published in 2007, and which I also read myself later in high school, is not set in Shade's time, but prehistoric times. It tells of Dusk, a young chiropter, which is a prehistoric gliding mammal, and his personal journey of realizing that he has evolved to be one of the first bats. I felt I related to the Silverwing books as someone with Asperger's, which is someone who has experienced the feeling of not fitting in, since a common element throughout almost all of them is that of the outsider. Shade is a runt in his colony, and Dusk, having the ability to fly, is out of place among his gliding chiropter colony. Before I was introduced to Silverwing, I'd say I also regarded bats pretty much the same as most other people, as just another fixture with vampires and witchcraft and stuff like that. When I was read the first book by my teacher in elementary school, though, I came to see bats for the first time as really unique and interesting creatures. What was more, I came to regard the world of nature that they lived in within the story as both beautiful and fascinating. As an example of this, I'll read an excerpt from the opening of Sunwing that describes the natural world as experienced by the bats. Wings trimmed tight, Shade sailed through the forest. The naked elms, maples, and oaks blazed in the moon's glow, their branches spiked with icicles. Beneath him, trees lay toppled like the skeletons of giant beasts. The groans of freezing wood filled the air, and in the distance Shade heard a mighty crack as yet another branch snapped and fell. He shivered. Even though he'd been flying for hours, he was still cold, the wind chiseling through his sleek black fur into his bones. Wistfully, he thought of the other Silverwings, roosting snugly back at Hibernaculum. Even though their bodies would now be glistening with frost, they were warm in a deep winter sleep that would take them through to spring. I also felt that Silverwing and Sunwing contained ideas that allowed important reflections on humanity's relationship with animals. A theme in both novels, for example, are silver tracking bands put on bats by humans, which gives Shade and his companions a desire to seek them out. This leads them to a human-built enclosed artificial forest used to experiment on bats and birds, including owls, which are enemies of the bats. Around the end of Sunwing, Shade and his friends realize that if not for that building, they may not have been able to form a truce with the owls. I'll read the excerpt for you here. "The band set us on the path," Marina said. "They made us seek the humans out." "And look where it took us," said Shade. "Oh, he's not as smart as he thinks," said Marina gleefully to Frida. "Yeah, they took us to the human building and the fake forest, and that's where the owls were too." Shade looked from her to Frida, mystified, but Frida nodded, her eyes sparkling. "Go on," she urged Marina. "What if you hadn't met Orestes? If you hadn't saved his life? You won each other's trust. I doubt King Boreal would have called a truce if that hadn't happened." Shade nodded sheepishly, finally realizing. "The humans brought us together," he said. "United us," said Frida. "We didn't win the sun through war. We won it through peace." As a result of this and similar ideas, I think the Silverwing books may have been one of the first, if not the first, catalysts for forming one of my core beliefs of today, that the natural environment is beautiful and deserves to be valued and protected. I think it was also one of the first real examples of my realizing that fiction can allow you to create new worlds, that can allow you to see some things in new ways that you did not before. That's my episode on what I learned from the Silverwing books. First in my 5-part series on significant pieces of fiction I discovered at different points in my life. Hope you found it interesting and that it helped you think about new ways for you to look at the fiction that you're a fan of. Come to watch next time for my second episode of the series, where I talk about a teen cartoon show that inspired me when I first watched it in grade 5, a time when I felt I was having trouble fitting in.